Technology has improved our lives dramatically over the last few decades. Our homes, cars, and phones, to name a few, now have more capability than ever before. The world is in a precarious situation, however. We need to move toward more sustainable energy and earth-friendly technology. Today we take a look at 5 emerging technologies that will change the world. Number 5. There's a focus right now on moving away from energy that produces emissions, and one of the best ways to do this is converting everything we use to run on electricity. As long as the electricity comes from green sources. Major strides have been made in the past couple of decades, but one of the biggest limiting factors is the capability of batteries currently. The most reliable and cost-effective design that's used is a lithium-ion battery. But these have limits with how much they can charge and how quickly this can be done, as well as some concerns about their safety if they're damaged. A company called QuantumScape is, however, developing an alternative which, instead of having liquid parts like a lithium-ion battery, is solid, known as a lithium metal battery. The results from the company's early tests have suggested these could eventually increase the range of an electric vehicle by as much as 80% and can be recharged in just a fraction of the time, too. Right now, the prototypes are too large to be fitted to cars, but they're expected to become much smaller in the coming years. So much so that QuantumScape has already signed an agreement with Volkswagen to start selling electric vehicles with the new batteries in 2025. Number 4. 3D printing has had a varied history since it first started being used in the 1980s, and even until recently, it's only been useful for very specific tasks, essentially feeding liquefied material into a chamber and by applying layer upon layer, being able to create a 3D object. It's a technique that's mostly been known for creating small plastic objects or replacement components for certain devices. As our understanding of materials has improved through 3D printers are increasingly able to make objects out of different substances and are becoming seen as potentially the future of manufacturing. From clothing and food to medical devices and the ability to rapidly prototype new designs, the possibilities are endless. But perhaps the most exciting area is how it'll change large projects. There's already a number of buildings around the world that have been built from 3D printed parts, and this is going to become even more common. Instead of needing to ship all of the different parts of bricks and other parts needed to build a house, all that's needed is a supply of the basic material and a printer, and everything can be manufactured on site. It'll reduce transport needs, wastage, and increase efficiency, and could mean new homes can be built at a fraction of the time they currently take. Number 3. There are 2 main reasons when people hear of blockchain. Either they start telling you about the best new cryptocurrencies to invest in, or they switch off from boredom. The fact is, though, that while blockchain technology does underpin the operation of these new decentralized currencies, this is just the beginning of how useful and integrated to our lives that it'll become. Put simply, a blockchain is a list of information that's linked together by a cryptographic technique, and once a block has been added, it can't be changed. It acts as a permanent record. To begin with, this was used to prove who owns a particular coin of currency, or more recently, pieces of digital art. But there are a number of companies exploring how much wider the uses are. There are already examples of how blockchain is being used to enable energy trading and other various transactions, but perhaps the most important use is that it can track the history of individual products. The food industry can benefit hugely from this by being able to prove exactly where and when ingredients were harvested or cooked, and brands will also be able to use blockchain to prove whether an item is an original or a forgery. Number 2. With our changing climate, wildfires are becoming more common across the planet, and they're becoming even more difficult to control. As an example, in California alone, 5 times the area is burning each year now compared to what happened in the 1970s. This is only expected to increase, and traditionally, the way to extinguish or at least limit the spread of fire would be the use of huge quantities of water or foam. But with water shortages happening too, and the reluctance to drop chemicals onto the land, an alternative couldn't come soon enough. Luckily, a solution was first revealed in 2015 and has continued in development to the point where it'll soon be deployed on a large scale. First designed to put out small fires in kitchens, the acoustic extinguisher uses sound waves to push oxygen away from the source of a fire and spread it over a wider area. This cuts off the fuel of the fire, and if maintained for long enough, will simply cause it to fizzle out. There have been attempts to do this before, but now that the optimal frequencies and techniques have been figured out, it's very likely that this will become one of the main methods of fire control in the coming decades. Number 1. Computer scientists from around the world have since the 1980s been pursuing the next big development, the creation of a quantum computer, and now they're closer than ever. Essentially, a quantum computer is different to a traditional one in the way that it stores and handles information. In a traditional computer, you'll be familiar with bits that can either be a 1 or a 0, but in quantum computer, they use qubits, which can be a 1 or a 0 quantum state or a superposition of both. What this means is that a quantum computer is able to solve a problem a traditional one can and vice versa. In some situations, we'll be far more efficient in doing so. One of the more interesting things about quantum computers is that they won't actually always be the better choice, and researchers are still exploring the situations when they'll offer an advantage. But the biggest hurdle right now is building one that's large and stable enough to see how well it can perform. What we do know is that quantum computing will be the future of computing many years into the future. Check out one of our other amazing videos.